The lights in Phoenix don't just power your TV, they keep the desert from reclaiming your living room. Most people think of a global conflict as a shower of missiles, but if you live in the valley, the first strike isn't a blast. It's a silent subtraction of the systems that make 4 million people possible in a basin that shouldn't hold them. You have about 6 hours after the power fails in July before your home becomes a kiln. Do you have a way to drop the temperature, or do you wait for a repair crew that's stuck behind a fuel shortage? World War III for a Phoenix resident is a story of energy and logistics masquerading as a story about water. If you're watching the headlines for mushroom clouds, you're looking at the wrong signal. Here are 5 civilian impacts in the valley ranked from the slow-burning pressure to the absolute daily life breakdown. The analysis assumes a state of extended global trade fragmentation, cyber disruption to domestic infrastructure, and a heavy strain on the national power grid. This isn't about doomsday, it's about physics.
Number 5. The industrial shadow. You likely see the massive semiconductor plants and data centers rising along the Loop 303 as the bedrock of the local economy. In a global war, they become your primary competitors for a shrinking pool of resources. This city is a tech fortress, but that fortress has an incredible appetite for the same electricity and water you use to survive. The proof is in the sheer scale of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company's footprint. These facilities require massive constant cooling and ultra-pure water processing, often consuming millions of gallons of water per day just to keep the machines from melting. When the national grid is stressed by cyber interference or redirected to wartime production, the priority label won't be on your subdivision's transformer. It will be on the high-tech hubs deemed essential for the defense industrial base. While these companies have built significant redundant infrastructure, the catch is that their presence creates a floor for energy demand that you can't outbid. If the regional power pool starts to dip, residential blocks are the easiest load to shed to keep strategic assets humming. Most people assume the city will protect its residents first, but in a wartime economy, the mission comes before the neighborhood. The better move is to stop viewing proximity to these plants as a safety net and start seeing it as a drain on local slack. If you're living in the North Valley near these hubs, map out exactly which substation feeds your block. If you share a line with a major industrial site, you might stay powered longer, but if you're on a separate residential feeder, you're the first one grid operators will look at when they need to balance the load. This competitive strain is a slow burn, but it sets the stage for sharper logistics failures because when industrial power is prioritized, the energy needed to move and cool civilian goods begins to evaporate.
Number 4. The pharmacy bottleneck. Phoenix is a city built on the promise of the active lifestyle, which is a polite way of saying the metro has a massive population of retirees and families who are medically dependent on a global supply chain. The catch isn't just that medicine stops arriving, it's that the climate makes the medicine we do have highly perishable. Look at the loading docks behind any major pharmacy on Bell Road or Chandler Boulevard. Those trucks are refrigerated, the warehouses are climate-controlled, and the entire system operates on a just-in-time model with zero tolerance for a 3-week delay in the Pacific. When trade with Asia fragments, the precursors for basic antibiotics, insulin, and blood pressure medications disappear. The proof is in the current pharmacy shelves. They already struggle with shortages during peacetime surges. In a war, that friction becomes a wall. The valley's distribution hub status provides some local cushion, but the bottleneck is that distributed doesn't mean stored. This is a pass-through point, not a stockpile. If cooling in a regional warehouse fails for even 12 hours because of a grid hiccup, millions of dollars in life-saving chemistry becomes trash. Don't assume your local CVS has a backstock. They don't. The better play is to work with your doctor now to transition to 90-day fills and ask for traveler's prescriptions to build a thin buffer. If you rely on a cold chain medication like insulin, a small solar generator and a dedicated medical fridge aren't luxuries, they're life support. This ranks at number 4 because while it's a terrifying personal crisis, it's a quiet one that happens inside homes before it hits the streets. However, as medical supplies and cooling become harder to maintain, the underlying energy to water connection starts to pull the floor out from under the entire metro. Number 3. The grid water pivot. You've been told your whole life that Phoenix is going to run out of water. That's a myth that ignores a century of some of the best water engineering on the planet. The real danger isn't that the water disappears, it's that the city loses the ability to move it and treat it. The Central Arizona Project, or CAP, is a 336-mile-long straw that drags Colorado River water uphill through the desert. That requires an immense amount of electricity, nearly 3,000 gigawatt hours a year.
The proof is in the pumping stations along the canal. They are the largest single consumers of power in the state. If a wartime cyber event or a physical strike takes out the high voltage lines feeding those pumps, the canal doesn't just slow down, it stops. While Phoenix has a strong buffer in its underground Salt and Verde River water banks, those systems also require high-pressure pumps and complex filtration that run on the same shaky grid. Even the Palo Verde generating station, the cornerstone of regional stability, requires treated wastewater for its cooling towers. If the pumps that move that effluent fail, the reactor has to scale back its output. It's a feedback loop. No power means no water, and no water movement means less power. Most people will react to a water outage by trying to buy cases of bottled water at Costco, which is a late-stage losing move. The better move is to understand the pressure loss protocol. If your taps go weak, it means treatment plants are struggling with power or chemicals. Fill every clean vessel you have immediately. A bathtub filled at the first sign of a pressure drop is worth 50 cases of water you'll never find at the store. This grid water dependency is the point where the crisis moves from your medicine cabinet to your kitchen sink. And when the water stops moving, the trucks that feed the city won't be far behind.
Number 2, the logistics snap. Phoenix is a consumption island surrounded by a desert sea. Almost everything people eat, wear, or pump into their tanks arrive via 2 main arteries, I-10 and I-17. In a World War III scenario involving oil disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz or cyber attacks on domestic refineries, the fuel tax on the valley becomes unbearable. Look at the gas stations on a Friday afternoon. They are already the most sensitive barometers of public anxiety. When the trucks stop, the city has about 3 days of food on the shelves. This isn't a theory, it's the physics of the grocery business. The proof is in the just-in-time delivery schedule that keeps supermarkets looking full while backrooms stay empty. Massive rail capacity coming through the state provides a hidden stabilizer, but the vulnerability is last-mile delivery. A train can bring grain to a silo, but it can't bring milk to the Safeway in Queen Creek. If diesel prices spike or supplies ration for military use, the cost of moving goods into the desert skyrockets. You'll see out-of-stock signs not because the food doesn't exist, but because it's not economically viable to truck it to a satellite suburb. Don't be the person fighting over the last bag of rice during a panic. The better move is to build a deep pantry of staples that don't require refrigeration. Think beans, rice, and canned fats before headlines turn red. If you see a 3-day trend of fuel prices jumping 20 cents a morning, that's your signal that the logistics snap is beginning. Top off your tanks and stop using your vehicle for anything but essential movement. This ranks at number 2 because while you can live without a pharmacy or a shower, you cannot live without the calorie train, and the desperation that comes with hunger is what triggers the final breakdown.
Number 1, the thermal trap. The most dangerous breakdown in Phoenix isn't a lack of food or water, it's the failure of the cooling covenant. People have a silent agreement with this landscape that as long as they have air conditioning, they can pretend the desert isn't there. In a war-stressed environment where the grid is fluctuating, parts for HVAC units are stuck in a port, and technicians can't get fuel to reach your house, the heat becomes a predatory force. The proof is in the heat island effect. Phoenix doesn't cool down at night because concrete and asphalt hold the day's sun, radiating it back into the midnight air. If the power goes out during a 115-degree stretch, your house will reach 100 degrees indoors within a few hours. This is where normalcy bias kills. Most residents will stay in their homes, waiting for a fix that isn't coming until they are too dehydrated to move. Modern building codes offer some insulation, but the vulnerability is the all-electric nature of newer suburbs. No power means no fans, no fridge, and no way to escape the heat. This ranks at number 1 because it is the fastest killer and the most likely cause of mass displacement. The ideal fix is a whole home battery and solar array, but for most, that's out of reach. The right move is to designate a cool room, the smallest room with the fewest windows, usually on the ground floor. Seal it, insulate windows with foam or heavy blankets today, and have a swamp cooler backup that can run on a small portable battery. If the AC dies and the indoor temp hits 95, you leave. Don't wait for 105. Move to a pre-designated site or a friend's house with a different power provider or a basement. The ability to recognize when the desert has won the thermal battle is the difference between a survivor and a statistic. Pause. Here is the key point. Phoenix is a masterpiece of engineering, but it's a high-maintenance one. It doesn't fail all at once, it fails in layers. You've seen the ranking. The sequence moves from industrial competition to medical shortages, then to water pressure issues, then to empty shelves, and finally to the thermal reality of the desert itself. If you're paying attention, you'll see the industrial load shedding before the grocery stores go dark. That's your window to act while others are still complaining about the price of gas. Your homework tonight is simple. Find your main water shutoff valve and make sure it actually turns. Then check the manufacture date on your AC unit. If it's over 10 years old, realize that you are living on borrowed time in a logistics crisis. If you want signal in a world full of noise, subscribe. If you're happy with the noise, keep scrolling. Stay observant, stay capable.